Welcome to another edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com. We're doing a series of interviews with the featured speakers for the upcoming Parental Alienation Conference taking place in New York City the first weekend in October 2nd and 3rd. The conference is titled Parental Alienation Syndrome, Past, Present, and Future, and it's geared towards mental health and family law professionals, but it is open to the general public and would be very beneficial to anyone dealing with parental alienation. As a bonus to our DadsDivorce.com readers, the first 20 people who email me at info@dadsdivorce.com will receive a free ticket, which is just about a $200 value. And then once those 20 free tickets have been given away, anyone else who emails me with their contact information can receive a discounted ticket price. So it'd be worth it to send me an email again at info@dadsdivorce.com. For more information on the Canadian Symposium for Parental Alienation Syndrome Conference, you can go to the website www.cspas.ca. Today's interview is with Dr. Richard Sauber. Richard's speech, he will be one of the featured speakers, and his speech will focus on why forensic evaluations are preferred to traditional psychotherapy in helping alienated children, but we'll also talk about some of the other issues involved with custody evaluations and dealing with parental alienation. So Richard, thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here today and help out in any way I can.
Well, first off, a really good question and a common question is for those who want to know, how do I find a therapist on the managed care list to help the family deal with the issues brought up by alienation and still be covered by insurance?
Well, if the matter of going through a divorce and getting some general advice and assistance with children in the transitional process of a divorce, managed care providers, whether mental health counselors or psychologists, would be fine, and most mental health professionals, if they haven't formally been trained in divorce counseling through their experience, would have many cases involving children and families going through the process so that they would be most capable of helping out. Now, if one is going through a litigated divorce or has the experience of alienation, then it becomes more complicated. That is, the nature of the presenting problem and how to deal with the presenting problem. And in those cases, it's very difficult to find a mental health professional that is trained and capable of responding to these needs. One certainly could check out a managed care list, call and try to interview the people on the list, but chances are whatever question you ask, the person says, "Oh, I'm an expert in every particular area," when in fact they're not.
Right.
Often in the yellow pages you'll see a list of 20 specialties, which lets you know that a person can't specialize in all those areas. They're just putting out a list of general services. And the reason I talk about the importance of getting the right psychologist is that most of the work that I do is when the local psychologist or even psychologist evaluator messes up or does a poor job in responding to the needs of the alienated child or abused child or whatever the complex issues are involving the particular case, and then it's a lot harder to undo the damage that takes place. When it comes to court or in the therapy, the targeted parent has a much more difficult job overcoming what they thought was going to be a helpful therapeutic experience, ends up being one that's quite damaging and further digs them into the hole of overcoming what they already have to overcome.
Sure.
So this is often in the role of, I'm talking about a mental health professional providing therapy. Now, there are psychologists that do evaluations, and many psychologists do a good job with this, like many psychologists do a good job with therapy. However, PAS cases or complex litigated cases in the family arena are so complicated that I would recommend, again, a specialist, because what happens is a lot of custody evaluators and general mental health professionals try to point out the strengths and weaknesses of each parent and do not take a position and present to the court for the judge to make the decision, as the judge should, but the judge is left with a balanced perspective so that the custody evaluator is well liked by all the parties, does a nice job with the pluses and minuses of each of the parents, and leaves it at that, as opposed to a senior evaluator that's going to determine what is the problem and take the perspective of what's best for the children, which often is a preference or a recommendation, let's say, for the targeted parent, which is going to be a fight against an army of other people that he would oppose. And so it's not a middle-of-the-road position. It has to be one of a strong position with sufficient evidence to enforce the recommendation.
If you want to give some advice to the, I guess, targeted parents out there on how do they deal with the children saying they don't want to see me, they no longer like me, they'd rather be with the other parent all the time, how can you deal with that?
Well, first, the targeted parent is like a boxer in the ring where he's going to need some water, someone to work with and make sure that he is strong and capable to go back into the ring. And what I find is the alienated parent typically begins to question themselves, blame themselves, feel alone, and that maybe they did something or could have done something else that would have been different in the relationship with the child. So that they have to realize that this was a setup that has happened typically long before the divorce, where the alienating parent has assumed a power position, undermined the parent's authority, and begin to work on the child in terms of an alignment with the child or children, so that they don't begin to blame themselves, so that they feel strong enough to withstand what's ahead in the battle to turn this around. Then what is helpful is that they are familiar with the literature. There's lots of books and articles on the internet and available for reading. Certainly Dr. Richard Warshak's book, Divorce Poison, which is now in the second edition, one of the most popular books. The book that I wrote with Richard Gardner and an attorney, Dr. Larandis, J.D., Ph.D., called The International Handbook of Parental Alienation Syndrome, has articles. It's more geared toward a professional, but many parents have benefited from reading it because it describes the legal process, the clinical process, and the whole background of PAS and the symptoms and how to cope with it. So there are a number of different books around which will aid the person in terms of understanding what's happened and what they need to do.
Sure.
Number one.
Well, you've mentioned some great resources and given some great advice, so thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Richard Sauber, one of the featured speakers at the upcoming Parental Alienation Conference, again, taking place in New York City the first weekend in October. For more information on the conference, you can go to www.cspas.ca. And for free tickets or even discounted tickets, please email me at info@dadsdivorce.com. That'll do it for this edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com. We'll see you next time.